Hey, good afternoon. It's Cameron Corder with another episode of the Quarantine Leadership Series, where we hope to inspire, encourage, and motivate you in your leadership. Today, I'm joined by a great friend, Dr. Lynda Gonzalez, who is the Senior Vice President, Chief Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at YMCA of the USA. Tell us about this doctorate, Lynda.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you for the invitation. But yes, this is a exciting step that just happened in October. I successfully defended my dissertation, and in December graduated from DePaul University with a doctorate in business administration. And I have to say, it's been, again, quite a journey in that it's quite an endeavor, but doing it in my 50s was also something
Yeah.
that was quite interesting. So, to say the least, it's been an amazing journey. I'm very happy it's done, but I sure did learn a lot along the way and was happy that I was able to focus all my studies on the YMCA. So, thanks for asking.
Lynda, do you remember the first time we met was over 10 years ago? And I was coming up to Chicago for a meeting and I had a Cubs source for baseball tickets. And I couldn't find anybody to go with me. And so Sean Dunn, I said, Sean, pick two or three people, because I had 4 tickets. I said, Sean, pick 2 or 3 people and y'all meet me at the Cubs game. And you came with Sean that day and we sat and watched a great game.
Oh, we watched a great game. It was like it was yesterday, Cam. It was absolutely beautiful, a beautiful summer day. And at the park that was, when you're at Wrigley Field on a day like that, and you had amazing seats, I
Yeah.
must say. And over peanut spear and hot dogs, we ended up, I think, creating some really special bonds that last all the way up to today. So thank you for that invitation. It was a
I
beautiful.
have to thank Sean for that. But we were in the shade too.
And
That's what
thanks
I
to
remember.
Sean.
It was so hot and sunny, but we were in the shade right down first base line or almost behind home plate too. So it was great. It was a great. Tell us about your current job and kind of what are the 2 or 3 things that you're focused on?
Well, thanks again. And I'd say leading our global diversity, equity, and inclusion work is, of course, always a journey. And you've been with us on this pathway for many, many years now. So I'd say our continued focus continues to be how we're able to support our local YMCAs as they journey in this global diversity, equity, and inclusion work. I'd say some of our highlights is really expanding out our bridging and belonging work. We're really finding that bridging and belonging is not only a great place for folks to start as they're on this journey, but it's also a place to also revisit, because we also know that essential to our work is going to be how we meet everybody where they're at. And within these polarized spaces, what are we able to do as an organization to continue to bring people together? So you'll always see us focused on working with our local YMCAs and ensuring that we're meeting them in all the different spaces that they're moving in with their communities. Cam, you've been around for a long time, and you know that each local YMCA and each of their boards of directors and their leadership teams and their communities have different needs, and we just want to make sure that we are reaching folks and doing our best, especially in the area that we feel we can be most effective, is helping our local associations in partnership connect with some of the communities that they may not be engaging fully, or how they're able to engage in their global work, especially at a time when global connections have become very important. So it's continuing in that space. And I have to say that the highlight continues to be our work with our local YMCAs.
Yeah, that's great. Some of that is your answer, so this may be a little redundant, but expand on a little bit. Why should DEI be important to the local YMCA?
I always state that as we journeyed in this work together, some of the first work we started doing with local YMCAs were those that were experiencing new demographics. Our commitment to be for all, many of our folks recognized that they weren't for all because there were key communities that they weren't engaging. So I would say our commitment is always ensuring that everybody that's in our places, in our spaces, in our programs feel welcomed and engaged and have that sense of belonging, which is very, very important in this particular space. And for me, it's always uplifting our commitment to be for all. to be an inclusive space. And one of the things that I get most excited about every day is that we are one of the organizations that continues to bring people together from so many different backgrounds, from so many different lived experiences, but they can come together in our spaces. And yes, it requires work and a lot of intentionality at times. But as you and I have seen, that's something that we have done as an organization historically. As we continue to open up our inclusion doors, we were once an organization for young men coming to industrial London, right? Especially those that were in tailor making, et cetera. And then how we've been able to expand our scope over the years is something that continues to, I think, inspire all of us.
Yeah. The topic has been out there, I mean, for a long time. Like I said, our Y's been on this journey for a long time, but I feel like over the last 5 years, not just within the Y's, but in uh, all of our society. And so I feel like there's a little DEI fatigue.
Yeah.
How do we combat that among our staff and our volunteers, that they're getting it at work, they're getting it at their church or in their neighborhood, and then now they're getting it at the Y's? How do we combat the fatigue?
Yeah, absolutely. And that fatigue comes in different ways, right? There's the polarization where it gets questioned. There's how this can become so political all the time, even as we're just trying to do our best to serve our communities. It becomes a polarizing conversation. Words become weaponized. People will take things out of context or define them differently. And so, with all of that, we all experience that fatigue. And it became really exhausting as we've seen the polarization shifts and the challenges that we've had in communities since before COVID and now even after COVID, how we're addressing that. And so, how I continue us all moving forward without that fatigue is recognizing that the core part of this work is about ensuring that everyone can feel welcomed and engaged. They can feel safe in the YMCA. That we start looking at this as not only core to our mission and what we're doing as far as ensuring the sense of belonging, especially for our young people, but it's about our core programming. You and I have talked about the importance over the years, and I appreciate the articles that you send me and continue to send me about we cannot lose sight that this is also about our operations. It's also about how we look at multicultural marketing segmentation that businesses do all of the time. Where are the gaps in our membership? Where are the gaps in our leadership? What are some interesting strategies that have been proven by other YMCAs that apply global DEI principles to help expand out their partnerships, their collaborations? We were all very blessed when it came to the recognition that so many of our philanthropists gave to the YMCA, knowing that we were the folks that were on the ground, that were able to reach the folks that were most marginalized, were most inequities. Even as we did even if we think of our meal programs and our feeding programs, what that did, not only to address a major need of a family, but also engaging that family into what is our YMCA community, our YMCA connection. By us serving through a global DEI lens, looking out for those that did need us at that time, we were also then able to ensure that those learnings were continuously driving our operational practices. I know that you all got called to do a lot of bridge building, including anti-racism training that you all were leading, not just for the YMCA community, but the communities in in your greater community area. And so, how do we discipline ourselves not to get discouraged when this becomes political, not to get discouraged when you feel that everybody is suffering from this fatigue when we have so much that we need to address? But how do we lift this up as yet another strategy for us to do better work to improving and partnering with communities to improve the greater well-being collectively, not just of our nation, but of our globe?
Yeah. So you referenced the term. How do we keep the politics out of the discussion?
With a lot of intentionality. with a lot of intentionality. And you and I have seen over the years when a core issue related to keeping young people safe can become political. And what we're able to do to ensure that we're working along all sides of the aisle in a completely multi partisan lens, meeting people where they're at so that we're able to state that as a non governmental organization, as a non political organization, as a nonprofit organization, how are we able to continue the safety of our families, the safety of our mental well being, and not make that political? Um, so many of us, I remember the days where I was working with local YMCAs that were addressing the tremendous escalation of young people that identified as LGBTQ in suicide rates. And we recognized that, hey, we are going to remove politics because this is a community that needs us. And I remember the very intense conversations that many of us had as youth development workers, how horrific it would be to ever have a child even contemplate that. Well, they were under our care or under our watch. So how are we able to look at that? And then the other thing that really keeps me inspired is all the connections that exist in the YMCA with people that would have not met otherwise. I've been honored to participate in some working groups with the National Academy of Arts and Sciences. And one of the reasons why they sought us out is they stated that as they looked at economic connectedness, as they were looking at the fact that people from different economic groups are just not integrating, it was the YMCA that they identified along with our libraries as spaces where you could still find those connections. And I'm honored that we're still considered a space, not only where people from diverse races, genders, lived experiences, but even economic groups that are integrating. And for many of us, Cam, that's been intentional in so much of our work, ensuring accessibility of everybody to the YMCA.
Yeah, I mean, we see it every day in our branches, the
Yeah.
just the different mix of people coming together, and there's so many stories that we can do that. How do so think of the small YMCA and the small community, very limited resources. That executive director, CEO is not only leading that YMCA and leading the vision and the board, but that CEO is probably spending time on the pool deck, lining ball fields, refereeing and umpiring, doing a little bit of everything. How are you going to help that YMCA with some of this discussion?
Yeah, I've always admired our small YMCA's and the ability of very small teams to fill in everything that they're doing. I always will state that this doesn't have to be an add-on. This is a yes and that can often make our work a lot easier. Some of our small YMCA's will tell me, well, we don't have that level of diversity in our communities. Right now, we're very representative. And I will state that's only one dimension of diversity. And oftentimes it's about race. And it really is so much more. It really is so much more. I know that we can look at our small YMCA's and learn that they're looking at programming for children and they hadn't considered, for example, the number of single parent households or the number of grandparents raising children, or what we all have so much more work to do related to ensuring that communities or those individuals that identify with disabilities are able to access our spaces. I mean, for every small YMCA, there is an approach that will be discovered once you start looking at those different dimensions of diversity and to see how they can be better engaged. And it can be very, very cost effective. There are tools that we have that pick up a phone and give us a call. But some really simple strategies that we have that can be incorporated into childcare programs. Some really fascinating work that we've had related to global DEI for seniors. And the fact that so much of our aging population has really been leaning into this because they have felt excluded. And so, how are we able to just do that to ensure that we'll meet each of your YMCA's where you're at, but we don't have to make it expensive?
Yeah.
And so many of our great learnings have also come from partners, our global YMCA partners, and many of our YMCAs across the country that have done some of this work with minimal resources, but that have been very willing to share their strategies and their approaches with others.
That's
So
great.
everyone can get involved.
So also listening to this, I hope, are several program directors or branch executives who are part of an organization that maybe this isn't on the radar screen, but they would like it to be. How do they influence up, or what role should they take to influence the leadership above them?
Well, I think that looking at our bridging and belonging work has been really interesting in that our frontline staff and some of our CEO leaders have really started this work through partnership with board members, with staff and others, just by introducing the conversation. I know when we were doing work, say for example, where you and I really had gotten connected when we were looking at all of those demographic shifts from like 2000 to 2015 of major changes in the southern parts of the United States, and there was a huge influx of folks coming in from Latin America, the Caribbean, others that were coming from parts of Europe. And there was just a lot of conversation of how are we going to engage these folks? And it really was building relationships oftentimes with staff and volunteers that were familiar with the communities, that had inroads into those communities, and that actually had family stories of those communities. So I'd say just by initiating the conversation based on your own strategic priorities, and if we're looking at a membership lens, for example, of how are we engaging some of these new members, just by elevating the conversation and utilizing easy to access demographic data and other data sources that we have and that we can direct you to at YUSA. Our research and analytics and insights team have done really great to make that very accessible to every local association in the country. So at least you're able to start looking at your own demographic data and so forth, which can be very telling, because then that ends up with ideas for collaborations in the public schools, local health entities, and so forth. And we've got a lot of examples of YMCAs like yourselves that have done it just by what you did, which was relationship by relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I've advocated to you, and I still think it's part of our faith-based mission. It falls right into what we want to be with our faith.
Yes,
We want to be inclusive. We want everybody to feel welcome and loved at the YMCA. We want to bring them closer to us and experience the magic that I think when they come through the doors. So,
absolutely. And that was a big part of our first
yeah,
conversation, is that we were really talking about the opportunity that we had in global DEI that we really elevated through our faith lens. And I can give you many, many examples of even our newcomer and immigrant work. Some of our closest partners in that work were the churches.
yeah,
So many of our closest partners in inclusion work have been our chaplains, our mission directors and such, because oftentimes they're also charged with serving the most underserved. I mean, that's when, I've always talked about Jesus Christ as an equity leader, an individual that was always thinking about the poor,
yeah,
the unsupported, the widows, the children. And so how we partner together in that, it's a yes and.
yeah. That's great. So as we end up, give us a little personal side. When you're not wearing your Y hat, uh, what are the hobbies? What do you enjoy other than the Cubs?
Okay. I still love the Cubs. I again, now that I have more time
Yeah, the
finishing the
doctorate's
doctorate,
behind you.
I still really enjoy research and study and learning people and individuals. As many places as I've been and as many people as I've met, it only opens up how much I don't know. And
Yeah,
so I'm a very curious person, and will learn and study from others. I learn from others every day. Uh, Living in a place like Chicago, I just out and about, whether it be in an Uber or on the train, you will just meet and see so many different people. And knowing that there's still so much to learn, that is. Family, of course, is huge. That
Yeah.
keeps me very busy, and still continue the love of travel and well, getting out to local YMCA's and so many of those things. So
Good.
there's a
Well,
lot.
yeah, you're great. You're fascinating. I enjoy it. We bump into each other maybe about once a year at some conference or a meeting. I need to find reasons to get back to Chicago. I hate the remote stuff. I'm part of the highlights of my career have been meetings in Chicago. When I joke though is I think I interviewed with Kevin Washington. I talk about, I said, so many meetings would land at the airport, go underground, pop up in the hotel, meet all day, go underground, get on the plane and fly back. And the same. So it's not glamorous, just
It's
you wouldn't even
not.
see daylight hardly. So,
But we can, with intentionality, we can make sure that, yeah, coming in early, we're right downtown.
yeah,
There's all types of pop-up spots in the trains. And, right now, since we are in our national office, I must say with the weather coming up, for those of you that are coming to Chicago, the Riverwalk, there's been a lot more happening here and a lot of investment. So we're
great.
waiting for you to come back, especially if
Yeah.
you get us some of those cup tickets.
Let's do it. Yeah. My Cub source is retired, so I don't know. I've got one small one. The seats might not be as good, but yeah, I
Maybe
guess I do
Kevin
have a
has
Cub.
an in.
One of our CEOs in North Carolina is a season ticket holder, he and his son.
Oh,
They
all
love the
right.
Cubs, so they got in the lottery and bought that. Jamie, you're watching this, so he's my Cub source maybe if I ever come back up there.
Inrupt
Thanks so
exists.
much for your
Thanks for
time,
doing what you're
everybody.
doing. And thanks
Well,
for elevating the voices of others, Cam.
I appreciate you and the work that you're doing. Let's make sure that DEI and this work and just bringing people together is at the heart of the work that we're doing. That's
Love it.
what we hope that the Q series is about. We hope that share this, talk about this with your team, and always remember to lead with love. Lynda, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cam. Leading with love.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right.
Bye now.